All right. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join our webinar. My name is Matthew Maurer, and I am a marketing coordinator at Coastal Business Supplies. I am joined here by Jimmy Lamb of Sawgrass Technologies. Jimmy is the manager of education and communications at Sawgrass, and he has over 25 years of experience in the apparel decoration industry. Today, Jimmy is going to be talking to us about winning the football market with sublimation. Specifically, what custom items you can create to have a very successful football season. And with that, I will be turning it over to Jimmy Lamb. All you, Jimmy.
Well, thanks, Matthew. Great to be here, and looking forward to talk to everybody about what I say is football stuff. Now, of course, the first thing we want to do is distinguish football because we're talking today about American football. We're not talking about the rest of the world, as they all refer to soccer as football, which, you know what, that makes a lot of sense because we don't use our feet that much in American football, at least for handling the ball. So anyway, just wanted to be clear on that. This is the American football market that we'll be talking about. So a lot of opportunities. There always is with sublimation. That's the cool thing is we can go into so many different markets with so many different product ideas, imaging, and everything else. So that just means there's more revenue opportunity. Now, I don't have any really great stats on the football market per se. When I started looking up stats, what do I find? Well, the NFL has grown by, no, we're not necessarily talking about NFL today. We're just talking about football. In fact, most of us will never do any work for the NFL. Probably 99.9% of us will never do any work for the NFL. But football is played at so many different levels that, yeah, there's opportunity everywhere. So one thing I looked at with market potential was, well, what do people spend on logoed sports apparel? Okay. So in 2015, apparently U.S. consumers spent $14.1 billion on logoed sports apparel. Now, how would you like to have 10% of that, or maybe 1%? Or maybe even like 0.001%, still pretty good, right? So when we look across the board, being that football is definitely tied in a little bit with logoed sports apparel, okay? Though we got a lot of other things we can do very specific to football and also things that are not apparel related. But some of our clients could include pro sports, maybe, okay, colleges, high schools, local leagues, events, tournaments, competitions. There's a lot of different things associated in the football world that we can look at, okay? And of course, the end user as well, as another potential. Now, some of the things going for you, though, if you want to tie the NFL back in, is it has been expanding worldwide, which is increasing the popularity of football, okay? So we see as there's more exposure to football, the American football, there's more opportunity at different levels potentially for us to sell. Fantasy football, okay? Fantasy football is a $7 billion per year industry. And what that does is maybe you're not going to be selling products to fantasy football people, but what the heck, maybe you can because people do form their own teams, But the big thing is it's more reach for football because you see people in that diehard fan base and it just reaches out again. So there's a lot of things going on out there that say, hey, there's good potential for working in the football market. Now, sublimation fits in very nicely because of the fact it's very visual. So that means we can put together vivid graphics. We can put together HD photos. We can do all kinds of attention-grabbing text messages. So there's a whole lot of things that we can use to create products such as fanwear, which is also part of what we're doing with football. Okay, fanwear would be basically spirit products if you want to get down to it. So at the end of the day, sublimation truly is a custom solution without a custom cost. In the world of pricing and margins, that's pretty important because the perception is high on the value and the cost of production is low, you make a greater margin. And the more and more you can increase the perception of value of the selling price without raising your costs, that's the more margin you can make, okay? Don't ever get that one backwards. People are like, always looking for a way to lower their price. No, we're always looking for a way to lower our price, to raise our price while lowering our cost because that's where we get a better margin. All right, so let's talk about some products for football. A lot of different ways we can go, okay? And our products for sublimation come in many different forms. I mean, there's over 1,500 different sublimatable blanks out there in the marketplace right now. And at the end of the day, a lot of times it isn't what we're making, it's what we put on it that defines what it is, okay? So technically, probably any substrate could be used in the football marketplace. But some of the things I want to start thinking about, if I'm going to be specific to football, I mean, first of all, we know we have a season. So that's very important that we have a season that, we already have, well, we're past spring training. We already have, high school teams starting, up, and college teams are starting up, and the pros are going to go in, and start playing exhibition games pretty soon. So there's a lot happening, but ask some questions like, what is popular with pro sports? You're probably going to be doing something at a local level, okay? But what's popular at the professional level, can we translate that back in to products for the local level? Are we going to make products that are focused on a team, an event, or an individual? We see a lot of that kind of stuff too. What kind of message is being delivered? What are we trying to say with our imaging, okay? Can a graphic be templated and reused? That's always useful. And also, let's think about two things that come to mind with football are fanware, and fanware is really any type of product that promotes the team, and tailgating. So when I say fanware, I'm thinking about, the products that people maybe wear or use not only at the game, but also on the way to the game or at home or in everyday life. And then when I'm thinking about tailgating, I start thinking about some of the products they would use at an actual tailgating event. Though all this stuff kind of crosses back and forth over on each other, all right? So those are some pretty cool ways to go. So let's just talk about apparel for a few minutes. Everything you see here I created with Creative Studio. In fact, in our Creative Studio, we do have under our art templates what we call sales samples. And if you click on that, you'll find the Spirit products, which are all based around Brighton High School. Brighton High School is a totally fictitious school that we created that you can use all you want to create samples, okay? Now, obviously the Brightons are the Tigers, and you can see I've gone and manipulated some of the logos that were available and put them on different products. The top left is a beanie, okay? The one in the middle on the top is actually an ear warmer, okay? It goes all the way around the head, so ear warmer. And then, of course, we have a T-shirt, and then you see a hoodie. You see some flip-flops, which, depending on where you play football, people wear flip-flops. Some places it gets really cold really quick. Other places it stays hot for a long time where I live, and socks. So in every case, you want to think about products, but then you need to start building some samples that you can show. Now, as you build a sample kit, I always try to make it generic. I mean, just build a sample kit, say, for the Brighton Tigers, and everything in there is related to the Brighton Tigers. If you start throwing totally different team mascots on everything, it gets to look cluttered and junky. So the idea is that everything is complementary within your sample kit. So if you're showing it to people or groups of people, number one, everything looks professional. Number two, it broadens the scope of what's available, and it tends to increase the size of your order because people buy more stuff because what have you presented out to them, okay? Like I said, all of this is done in Creative Studio. All these images are in Creative Studio. If you have the SG400, the SG800, or the VJ628, which are the printers in our Virtuoso system, then you have access to Creative Studio. Whether you're using it today or not, you have access to it. You can go in, build your own samples. I created them in Creative Studio and then used Product Mockup Maker to actually print out these different images that I put into PowerPoint. And with some of the images that look very realistic, the hoodie looks very realistic. The shirt looks pretty realistic. These are, they're a little flattened. They're not quite as pretty as maybe as the final product, but I think it also puts out the message that you're probably trying to create with these images. Now, if we go straight into tailgating, we start thinking about all the different things people are doing. This could be a huge list, okay? Because there's things I don't even have listed here that you could certainly use. Top left-hand corner, I took and made a drink hugger, okay? It looks like a shirt, which is kind of cute, and it's kind of fun. I mean, there's some really cool tools within Creative Studio. For example, there's a grunge overlay. Then I put the grunge overlay over the tiger there, just to give it that little grungy look. Over here, I put Tiger's Rule, where you see the shredded football. And again, what I did was I just used one of the fonts in there that looked kind of shredded as well. And it's actually a purple font with a gold shadow, okay? And it's sort of a gold. It's an orange. It's not really a gold. Sorry. And that was just a copy and paste kind of thing to create that shadow look. So here you're talking about a golf towel. so you use it for hand towels, for cooking, or whatever else. Maybe we're going to do some coasters just with that football theme. We got serving tray, and the list can go on and on. We got all kinds of beverage containers that we could sublimate. We got flags. We have table runners. We have placemats. I mean, depending on how elaborate something is set up, you could build a whole tailgating kit. Think about that. You could have a whole tailgating kit where maybe you carry it around in like a really nice big picnic basket hamper style, and that's where your sample kit is for tailgating. So you kind of open it up and pull all the things out. So it's a very creative way to show it to your customers. And we'll talk more about who your potential customers are in just a few minutes. The flags I mentioned, this is like an outdoor garden flag over here on the right-hand side. And on the left side is a car flag. And this is another one where I used some of those special effects within Creative Studio to get some of the look that I was trying to do. I got some more of that grunge look. I did a fade of the orange kind of fading into the center and the purple fading in. So it's kind of fun. And this is just another one of these old characters I picked up out of Creative Studio. I just went into images and did a search on football and found all kinds of stuff. In fact, there's a ton of templates in there too that aren't related to Brighton if you go look up for that as well. So here's some more pieces we can put into our sample kit, which kind of falls under fanware because it's spirit, but the reality is most of this is used for tailgating. So, you don't have a clear-cut definition between the different groups. It's really just the individual products. Seat cushions that you can, use obviously at the football game. And they're easy to sublimate, fairly inexpensive to put whatever you want on there. So that makes you a little bit more comfortable when you're up there in the stands. Christmas ornaments, you can't go wrong with that. Here I have a football helmet, which maybe is for a player. And he has his number 12 on one side, and it has the mascot on the other. Or it may be it's a league where people have a following because they're stars of some kind. So the fans just want that person's number, okay? Here on the bottom one, I used the tiger print, a tiger paw ornament because, after all, they are the tigers, right? And that's just showing both sides of the ornament since it's a two-sided product. So those make some pretty cool gift items. And then we got all kinds of things we can do in home decor. You can see we have the Brighton High School floor mat. You see we have the clock there, and then it goes on and on from that. I mean, you look at all the home decor products that we have, it's incredible. I mean, you can do fan memorabilia that's just like metal photo panels they can put on the wall. And you can deviate. I know you're seeing the same tiger, the same stripes, kind of like over and over again, but you can get creative and take pieces of any aspect of these different logos and, make it a little bit more creative, putting different kinds of backgrounds in, putting the different grunge overlays and some of the other overlays in there. Just a lot of cool stuff you can do to bring all these things to life. So it's kind of up to you to use a little creativity to make all that happen. But suffice it to say, Coastal has a tremendous array of products that can be used in the football marketplace. Now, one thing I don't talk a lot about because most of us don't really pick it up, but there is some aspect in uniforms when you start looking at the smaller peewee type leagues. They may be wearing standard t-shirts where you can do some sublimation on that. You can certainly do the socks. So there may be some of these different uniform aspects you can do, but really just think of all the different things you can do with the fanware. Now, I thought I had another picture here. I also put together some products that were like pet related, and I apologize I don't have it on there, but like the pet bandana. So, the pet can have, the spirit as well. So just a lot of cool things out there. Up to you to kind of figure it out. But we can't really talk about any given sport without talking a little bit about intellectual property known as IP. And that's trademarks and copyrights. Also patents fall into that, but for our purposes, trademarks and copyrights are IP, intellectual property. Now, depending on the level of who you're working with, there may be some of these issues. So if you're making fan-based products, you need to make sure that if you're making them, selling them yourself, that you're not going to get yourself into kind of legal trouble. Most team and event names are trademarked, okay? And most mascots and graphics are copyrighted. So copyright typically is applied, just think of it as artwork, and trademark is applied to text, if you want to think of it that way. Now, I do want to make it clear that without getting too deep into what trademarks really are, same with copyrights, that people don't own the words, but they're able to mark a word as being used as part of a trade name or service. Okay, so for example, Nike does not own the word Nike, but they have rights to the name as it applies to certain products. Okay, so just be aware of that. Big exception typically is public schools. Elementary, middle, and high schools, they typically don't know what trademarks and copyrights are. In fact, a whole lot of them are actually using graphics that are copyrighted to someone else. Now, licensing means that you have a right, a legal right to use something, which means you usually pay somebody some money. So if, for example, you are selling to the owner of a copyrighted image, I mean, maybe the team itself went out and copyrighted their mascot. They have the copyrights, they own it, you're selling direct to the team. You don't need to worry about licensing because you're selling directly to the owner of the image. Now, another case is you may be working as a contract provider or fulfillment provider to an authorized licensee, which means someone who does have the rights or a license to reproduce that IP, and typically they can subcontract out to you that you may need something in writing. But if you're selling to anyone other than the owner or the licensee, you're going to need a license of your own or some form of documented permission to produce the IP. Like I said, most public organizations, I can't say all, I said most, don't have in place any kind of licensing, trademark, or copyright program, okay? Because they don't know how to do it. They look at it a lot of times, well, we're a public domain anyway because we're owned by the citizens, if we're a public school, whatever else. I'm not going to say that they're all that way, okay? I'm just saying most of them. But when you go into private and even nonprofit organizations, they typically are a lot more protective of what they have. So you just need to be careful of that, okay? So I want you to be aware of it. So in comparison, taking a look at some of the different groups out there, Major League Sports, they have very intense licensing programs, very, very expensive application fees. You have to pay upfront royalties on projected sales, and if you don't make the sales, you don't get the royalties back. You're probably never going to do a professional sports, at least not a major league. Minor leagues can be different. Some of the different minor leagues, and there are football minor leagues, they have a lot less restrictive programs. There's still going to be licensing, but it's usually affordable to get into it for a local team if you happen to have one, okay? So keep that in mind. A lot of paperwork and everything, so you still got to go through and abide by a lot of rules and regulations, but there are possibilities probably with a minor league, but not much with a major. College and universities, that's another one that there's a lot of IP there, and there's a lot of protections going on, and you typically would have to pay an application fee and royalties on your sales. You go through a pretty intense application process, and a lot of the colleges and universities are managed by an agency called CLC, the Collegiate Licensing Company, which you can find them at clc.com. If you look at smaller colleges and universities, a lot of them have an in-house licensing program. It's less restrictive, lower fees, in many cases no royalties. I have one of those licenses. It's just an annual fee. It's a simpler application process. A good point to start with is the Dean of Business Affairs, okay, and then kind of go from that. So there is some hope in getting into the colleges and universities. I mean, most of them are open, for getting into, but the bigger they are and the more popular they are, the more restrictive they are and in the licensing process. Keep that part in mind. Local schools, if they're public, typically they don't have any type of IP program. Private schools, they may have some type of IP program, okay? You look at public leagues, city, county, and state-sponsored leagues, they're just like the schools. Most do not have a licensing program. Where you do have to be a little careful is that some of these public leagues have corporate sponsors, and if a corporate sponsor's name is tied into the name of the team, you have to make sure that no one gets offended, especially if you're trying to sell products to generate revenue based on those teams, okay? Private leagues, again, more likely to have a licensing program. So that's kind of an easy way to distinguish it. If it's private, or include nonprofit, because that's sort of a corporate issue. So if it's private, corporate, nonprofit kind of thing, there's probably licensing involved. If it's public, there's probably not. But be careful with those probably words, right? Okay. Then finally, we have different kinds of tournaments, competitions, and events. Again, municipal, same general rule, probably don't have it. Privately run, they probably do have it. So keep in mind, these are all good opportunities, okay? Don't misunderstand that. These are great opportunities to go out and do some sales and marketing too. I mean, don't be afraid because there's IP involved. Just work out a deal with whoever you're working with. So in the sales and marketing scheme of these things, one of the first things I want you to do is to create, a sales sample kit. You really got to have a good sales sample kit. I can't emphasize that enough. And you need to really put a lot of thought into it. And you need to have some angles of what it is you're selling and why it is that they should buy it, or really and truly why does it benefit them. A lot of times this is a fundraiser, and sometimes when you say fundraiser, you're thinking immediately public schools, you're thinking maybe nonprofits, but I mean, fundraisers can be a big deal for even very well-organized sports leagues. And maybe fundraiser isn't even the right word, because a lot of times we misunderstand what we hear when we say fundraiser. But if you have a league that needs to generate revenues to help support the league, anything they can sell is a worthwhile endeavor for them. So when you start presenting it to them as products that they can sell at the football games, their competition or tournaments, shall I say, all those could go a long way to getting your foot in the door. Whether it's publicly run or privately run, everybody needs funds, and that's a great way to do it. One of the things that we would do, and it wasn't with football, but I'm just going to tell you because I started with a different marketplace, but we were trying to get into some special events where we were having trouble getting in, and we created a program where we would go in and sell product that we made. We chose the products. We created them ourselves. We set the pricing. We took all the risk, and we paid them a percentage of everything we sold. So they had no money involved. They just got a percentage of everything we sold. Think of it as a royalty. Other programs, you sell them products that they mark up and resell. So there's a couple of different ways you can go with that, okay? So if you're going to go do any kind of sales and marketing, a basic sales approach looks like this. Analyze the market and or the client. Create product ideas. Produce a sample set. Develop a sales pitch that goes hand in hand with the sample set. In fact, a good sample set becomes the sales pitch in many cases because a picture does tell a story pretty darn well. Same thing with football, who, what, where, when, how, all those kind of things. Keep in mind that some of the sub-levels of the given market would be routes like fulfillment, wholesale, and retail. So fulfillment, you're filling orders for other people, okay? Wholesale, you're selling your own products to retailers who resell them. And retail, you sell your own products to the end user. And a lot of times this will be on a royalty basis. You sell directly into the end user and you give a royalty back to whoever, owns the team or everything with it. You got to definitely ask the question, is licensing required? When you look at products, what's popular in the retail world? What do people like? What do people buy? Different designs, what are the restrictions? I mean, I've done like the university license I have, very, very restrictive in what I can print, okay? Very restrictive in color and in image. I can't just go out and do anything I want. I had to get their permission for each new idea, let's put it that way. And of course, always look at how big is the following because you want to get your money back. So that's all about analyzing the client. With the product ideas, brainstorm. And brainstorming means sitting down and writing down every possible concept you come up with, no matter how silly it might seem. And think about visual messaging. Think about the end user who's actually going to use this ultimately. Think about very creative substrates and creative substrate visual image combinations. And in this case, really and truly, don't overthink. Okay, just write it all down. As it comes to mind, write it down, idea after idea after idea. Later, you'll go and start axing out stuff and say, that doesn't make sense, or I can't do that, or that's not going to make any money. Because you got to think of what the perceived value of it is as well, so that you have enough room to make a margin where you can pay yourself and anybody else that you may have to pay off along the way, okay? All right, then finally, you're going to make that sample set. And, a good sample kit in my mind is 7 to 10 pieces. Once you get over 10 pieces, it can get overwhelming, and under 7 could be underwhelming. So you want samples that have a great visual impact. Hopefully they can tell a story or deliver a message. And a lot of times you can do that with just pure graphics. I mean, when you see the flaming football and the tiger stripes behind it. Now, in a local environment, people recognize that's the Tigers, and, it's about football, and the smashed up football. we're going to trash you kind of thing. Think about products that are complementary in order to increase your sales potential. So when you got multiple products that are complementary to each other, like putting together a tailgating kit, you increase the potential for the size of the order. I always make my kits for the whole market, not just one client, so I can show it to multiple clients within the same marketplace. And a lot of that is by considering creating a fictitious organization, building your samples, and never use IP without permission. Once you have all that put together a sales pitch. Keep it simple. Stay away from fluff. Try to think about how your product provides a solution to someone's need, okay? And a lot of times this may be from a fundraising angle. It's about generating revenue for a team or an organization, if you're talking about athletic boosters in the high school, for example. So that's fulfilling a need. Always be about fulfilling a need, okay? Good, clean pitch, facts, details, know your products, okay? And then go for it, okay? Develop that sales pitch and then go produce it. All right, football, it's easy to do, man, okay? And it's the right time of the year. Focus on perceived value, okay? And keep in mind that, too, when we're talking about football, schools are only one small part. There's lots of different leagues, and keep in mind of that. Explore it. Do some exploration. See what's going on in your community. And if you can develop a program for your community, you can go into other communities, too. So don't feel like you're restricted there. It's just a starting point. Think very carefully about what you're putting on stuff. Full bleed images look so much better than images that have just a white area in the background. Keep in mind that substrates cost far more than ink, so focus on the right item for the application. Think about that total cost, of what I'm going to sell it for. And never undervalue. Too many of us undervalue and underprice, and that's just not a good place to be. And if you're a Creative Studio user, go into Creative Studio, choose any product out there as a starting point, go to the templates, and then just do a search on football and see how many different templates show up. There's a bunch of them. Then you can go over to images, and you can click on images, type in a search word of football. You're going to get a ton of images there. If you want to use the Brighton Samples, you go to the templates again, click on it, go down to Sales Samples, click on it, and I believe it says School Spirit, and you're going to find the Brighton stuff in there. Feel free to use it. Feel free to chop it up, reorganize it, whatever you want to do, and put it on the stuff, okay? All those things will go kind of hand in hand to putting together your football kit. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Matthew, it's great to be working with you today, and I want to thank everybody for coming out and hope that you maybe picked up a few things here, and look forward to doing some more webinars. I believe we'll be doing about one a month with Coastal for the rest of the year, so we hope to see you guys here.
Great. Thanks so much, Jimmy, and thanks so much to everyone who joined us. Appreciate your time again, and we'll see you at the next webinar.